All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar, Dynamics NAV 2016 Security, a comprehensive how-to, brought to you by ArcherPoint. With all of NAV 2016's new security tools and setup options, it can be difficult to know if you're getting the most out of your software. Fortunately, our presenter, Crystal Hill, comes with years of experience in NAV and has established a track record of success as the lead developer on more than 50 upgrades and 20 new NAV implementations. Crystal is currently an NAV software developer on the ArcherPoint customer service team. In our time today, Crystal will cover the basics of NAV 2016 security, sort out fact from fiction, and provide some tips and tricks on how to get the most out of the new security features in Dynamics NAV. We will offer Q&A at the end of the presentation, so please either type your questions in the questions pane of your GoToWebinar console as we go along, or use the raise your hand option during Q&A to ask your question verbally. I will announce the person asking the question and unmute your line at that time. So without any further delay, let's get started. Crystal, over to you.
Thank you, Susan. So hello, everyone. As Susan stated, my name is Crystal Hill, and I am one of the software developers here at ArcherPoint. As we go through this webinar today, I do want to point out that you will hear me use the term Microsoft Dynamics NAV, and Navision interchangeably when I'm referring to the Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2016 database. During this webinar, I'm actually only going to go over 2 of the new security features in NAV 2016 security because there are a lot of new features, but these are the 2 that I was most excited to see in Navision 2016. So before we get really deep into the new security features, I do want to go over a few things that have not changed in 2016. There are still a few items that you will have to do as your basic security that you have seen in the past for your RTC systems. 1, if you are going to have a link to your Microsoft, or I'm sorry, your Windows login, you will have to create an Active Directory account in order to create that link between Navision and your Windows account. You still have to create and set up a user in Navision, and you have to add permissions for the modules that you want that user to have access to on that user card in Navision. So the user card, for the most part, the user card is the same. You still have your general tab, and your general tab on your user card is going to show your basic information, like your username, email address. If you have an expiration date, you can set that expiration date in the general tab just like you did previously. You're also going to still have that Windows Authentication tab, and that's the tab where you link your Active Directory account to the user in your NAV database. You will still see the Microsoft Dynamics NAV Password Authentication tab that allows you to add that extra layer of security if you want to basically force a login for a second login outside of your Windows account when the user logs into NAV. You're still going to see your Web Service Access tab if you're using web services, your Office 365 Authentication tab. You're going to notice the addition of a FAST tab called User Groups, and this is actually one of the new security functions that we will go over in this webinar. And you're going to notice you still have the user permission sets, and this is where you assign the permissions for the modules that you want your user to have access to. So these are some of the basic things that have not changed in the new security system. So as part of this webinar, we are actually going to go over 2 new security features that, like I said, I'm really excited to see in Navision. 1 is the addition of user groups. What this is doing is this is actually allowing you to create user groups in the Dynamics NAV database versus creating user groups in Active Directory and then linking those to Navision. You actually are going to be able to create those directly into your Navision database. We also have the ability in 2016 to record permission sets. During this part of the webinar, we will go over some tips and tricks for things that I learned while practicing with this function, and we will go over the include-exclude permission sets object as part of the recording permissions. With these two features, I actually see security managers being able to maintain cleaner, more accurate security directly in NAV. It's going to help you have a one-stop shop for your information, so you're no longer going to have to go into Active Directory accounts to view your user groups and then go into NAV to see how those user groups are linked to your actual users. Like I said, this is just two features that I think were maybe a little bit, not to say overdue, but really good features in 2016 security. So let's go ahead and start looking at user groups. So what user groups are going to do in 2016 is it's going to allow you to add a group directly into the NAV system to where you can add users associated with that group and permissions associated with that group. This is going to take the place, or it can take the place, of your old Active Directory user groups that you had to create and link to NAV. So what this is going to do is it's going to give you full visibility in your Navision database. So you're no longer going to have to look in two separate locations to see your user groups and how those are linked to your users and the permissions in NAV. It's kind of going to give you a one-stop shop. Some of the pluses that I can see for this is easier maintainability and the fact that your security audits should be easier because everything, once again, is in one centralized location. So you no longer have to look for it in two separate places. So what I want to do is I actually want to kind of just jump right into the NAV database and show you exactly how easy it is to create these user groups and assign users to these user groups for use. When you're in NAV, if you just go up and type permissions, and you choose your permission sets, you're actually going to see up here, you're going to see user groups. From here, you can actually create a new user group by typing in your user group name and a name in that you can easily identify what this user group is used for. One of the things that you want to make sure of when you do this name is that it's not only easy for you as the security manager to come in and look at this, but it will be easy for any security managers that come in the future to be able to understand what that user group is going to be used for at a quick glance of the name. Once you have these user groups created in your Edit User Groups tab, you can actually go to Navigate, User Group Permission Sets, and in here you can associate those NAV permission sets with the group for the items that you want members associated with this group to have access to. So in this case, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to select just a few of the first permission sets here, even though I know these really don't have anything to do with the vendor card update. See, it's that easy. You've now created a user group, you've associated the permissions with the user group, and this is now ready for you as a security manager to add members in Navision for the modules that you want them to have access to. So adding users to a user group in NAV, there are two separate ways that you can do this. Both are easy, and it's just going to be a preference as what you as a security manager, what option you want to use. The first way to add a user is to actually go to your users card, highlight the user that you want to add to that particular user group, hit Edit to go into the user card, and you're going to notice that we have this User Groups tab. From here, you can either click New, or you can highlight the first available blank line, click your drop-down, and then add that user to that user group. So now this individual is a member of the test user group, and it was literally one click and they're associated as a member. If you want to remove that user, you can actually highlight, right-click, and do delete line, and it removes that user from that user group that easily. One of the things that I do want to kind of point out, just as you saw probably, once you add a user to a specific user group, you're going to notice that it automatically updates their permission set. As you add a user group, any new permission sets that are in that user group will be added to the list that you see under that user card. One of the things you need to be aware of as a security manager, you are no longer going to be allowed to go down and just delete the permission sets if that permission was added as part of a user group. If you determine that you do not want a user to have that particular permission, you will have to go in, delete the user group, and then add each individual permission for the modules that you want that user to have access to. But as you can see, you have added the user group, you have added the permission sets to that user group, and you've added a user. Really easy, really fast. And it's really clean. So there's actually a second way that you can add a user group, and that is you can go up and you can actually type user and select user groups. You can select the user group that you want to start adding the different individuals to, and you can do user group members, add users. This is going to give you a full list of all the users that you have in your database. So the plus of doing it from this tab, if you are going to add multiple users to a new user group, is you can go in and you can highlight all of the users that you want associated as members, click the OK button, and it will add all of those individuals at once. If you determine that you do not want a specific user, you can highlight them, click delete, and it'll delete them out. Or you can highlight the line and click delete line, and it's going to delete them out that way as well. Okay. So one thing I want to point out, I'm actually going to open up my user card again. And then I'm going to go to user groups. And I'm going to go to the user group membership for the vendor card update. And what I just wanted to point out is it does not matter if you add the user group in the user card or if you add it through the user group members. It's going to update your user card accordingly. So if I was to remove myself from this vendor card here, you're going to see it automatically removed all the information from my user card. So that's your typical NAV functionality that you expect to see. So you do not have to go to the user card to see those updates. It will automatically pass it across for you. So as you can see, either one of those options is really easy to add a member to a user group. That's part of the reason I'm so excited about these user groups, because it's allowing the security managers to put everything in your NAV database. It's allowing you to create your user groups here instead of having one in Active Directory and then having to link them through the security here. It's allowing you to add and remove memberships in quick and easy clicks. And as you can see over here on the right-hand side, there are a couple neat little tools, like in these fact boxes, that allow you quick one-stop shop views of who is in what user group. You can see your members, and you can also see the permission sets associated with those user groups, just right there. Makes it very easy for security manager to see what they have, what permission sets, and who's associated with those groups. So now you're looking at this and you're probably thinking, yeah, okay, but I'm not only going to have 3 user groups. I will probably have 15 plus, and I need to be able to see what roles or permission sets I have assigned to each user group so that I can go through and look at the roles or permissions and then assign my users to my user groups accordingly. They actually have a neat little link here that will take you to a page where you can see all of your user groups that you've created, and by the role ID for the permission set, you can go through and determine what user group you want each individual to have a membership of based on this report. From here, you can also go one step farther, and if you say, okay, you know, I think I want them to have the ability to post or to do bank deposits, but I'm not sure if I want them to have post or I want them to have edit capability. You can go one step further and see what table objects or table data objects are associated with each role here in this screen as well. Just one of those neat little features that they've associated with the group. Also, if you go to your Users tab, you can highlight each individual user, and you can see what permission sets they are associated with, and you can also now see what user groups they're members of. Like I said, just kind of a cleaner, easier way for you as a security manager or an individual that may be just needing to know what membership individuals have, go in and look in your NAV database versus trying to maintain Active Directory accounts and division security. So as you can see, this is going to allow you one-stop shop for your user groups. So the next item I want to go over is recording permissions. I just had to create a role from scratch the other day, and when I saw this feature, I was really excited because this is going to allow you to create custom roles by performing the steps that you want your users to be able to perform. It's going to automatically put your table data in, what permissions they need, like read, insert, modify, delete, and they have the ability for you to check a box, and it also imports all of those underlying or indirect tables associated with the actions that you may not know of when you're initially doing that process or trying to create that custom role. It's going to allow you to include or exclude current roles from the new permissions or permissions that you're updating with part of this recording. I find that this tool is going to be very useful, especially if you have roles that you are creating for individuals that are going to be either very limited or very broad in the scope of their duties. So once again, let's go ahead and jump into NAV and review how you actually can create a recording for a permission set. So we are going to go into the search bar and type in permissions for permission sets. So one of the tips that I want to point out at this point in time, before you go in and start getting kind of recording happy, I would create either a new permission set here, or if you're going to update an existing permission, create a copy of the original permission set before you start your recordings. The reason for this is because once you've finished the recording, you're done. And I'll show you that as we do an actual recording, but reversing the information is not as easy as recording it. So get a copy of your original role if you are going to update a current role that is working, or create a new role if you want to create a custom permission set here before you start your recording so you don't have to go back. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new vendor card. So I'm going to say I'm creating a role that the whole entire purpose of this role is to allow a user to go in and update the vendor card. We don't want them to be able to do anything else in NAV. The only thing we want them to do is go in and modify and update the card. So once you have your new permission set created, we're going to go up to the Permissions tab. You're going to notice this is blank. There is nothing in there. There's no table data relations, no object relations, nothing at this point. If you click on your Actions tab, on the far right-hand side, you're going to see this button called Record Permissions. So tip number 2, if you are going to record the permissions for an individual, you need to make sure that you yourself have permissions for whatever you're recording, or else it's going to throw errors. And if you don't want those errors for the individual, you need to make sure that this step you have super or super data, or an individual that has super or super data is going to be doing this recording session. So we're going to go up here and we're going to click Start. This message will pop up every time. If you want to start the recording, you have to hit yes. It's just letting you know that your information is being cached so that it can pull it up and input the information into your permission set for you at the end. So I'm going to hit yes. I'm going to go to my vendors list. I'm going to select a card. And I'm going to say, okay, I want this person to be able to update the name. I want them to be able to change the zip code. And I want them to be able to go in and change the vendor posting group. Okay. And I'm going to hit OK. Duplicate contacts were found. Yes. Okay. And we're done. So now at this point, I'm going to go in and I'm going to hit my stop button. This is kind of the point of no return. If you hit yes, it is going to add the values into the permission set that you were on. If you made a mistake or realized, wait a minute, maybe I didn't want them to do everything I just clicked, you can hit no and then go back and restart your recording. I'm going to go ahead and hit yes. Okay. And as you can see, this actually created everything I needed for my user to go in and update those fields in the vendor card. In the equivalent of a couple minutes, I created a new permission, ran through the steps of what I want my user to be able to do, and have all of the table data associations that I need created automatically for me. that easy. So one of the things that I do want to point out is this add read permissions to related table. I didn't click it on the first round, but another tip, I always check this button. This button here is what is going to allow the system to determine if there are any underlying or indirect tables associated with the actions and put those permissions in your permission set as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear this out, check this box, start this process again, and of course I'm going to hit OK or yes. And I'm going to go back to this user and I'm going to change them back to 2 and decide now we want them to be Atlanta. And I'm going to go change this back to foreign. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go back and stop my recording again and add the information in there. So now in this particular case, you're going to notice there are no additional tables for the steps that I just took. But if I was on like inputting a sales order and I was going to allow them to update dimensions, as most of you are probably well aware of, the dimension table is one of those indirect tables that you need permission to read, but you may not necessarily think of as you're creating a new permission. This checkbox here will automatically add the read permission for that dimension table in that instance. So just tip, me personally, unless there is a specific reason that you don't want them to have access to those underlying tables for read writes only, I would always check that box. So now there's another tip that I kind of learned as I was going through this process. Most of the time, you are not going to have a process where you want the user to only do one step. You're going to want them to be able to update the vendor cards and, say, update the customer cards. Recording permissions in here under your permission set, you can record the permissions for one part, and then after you have those down and you make sure that you've clicked only those links or text boxes or functions that you want that user to have access to, and this is working, you can actually go in and record the second part of what you want this particular permission set to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Start, and I'm going to click Yes, and we're going to say, okay, you know, we want this user to be able to go in, and I'm going to select your customers list, update the customer card as well. So I'm going to go in here, and we want them to be able to do the same thing, update the name, change the zip code, and we want them to be able to change the customer posting group. Click OK. So now I'm going to go stop and add. You'll notice that it added those table data objects in here with the correct read, insert, modify, and delete permissions for the customer card update as well. So you can record your permissions in steps. One of the things that I would suggest is if you have a permission, you've recorded step 1, you've tested it, you've verified it works, and it does exactly what you want to do at that point, I would create a duplicate, or I would copy and paste the rows into an Excel spreadsheet so that you can reference them later. That way, when you start the second part, you can always revert it back to your original permission and start over if you need to. So the last thing that I actually want to go over as part of this webinar is this button that you see up here called Include, Exclude Permission Sets. So this is actually one of those buttons that I clicked by accident the first time and realized that it is a very powerful tool. This is one of the reasons why I tell you make copies, make copies, make copies. This button does exactly what it tells you it's going to do. It will include or exclude permission sets from the permission that you are currently on or trying to edit. So what that means is, say you've created this new role, you've done the vendor step where they updated the vendor card, you've done the step where they've updated the customer card, and then you go back and look at it and say, you know, maybe I don't want them to have this customer card option. I want to take that out, and I only want them to be able to update the vendors. You could use this include, exclude permission set. So I'm going to take a screenshot of this here real fast before I do it. So we're going to go up here, and we're going to exclude all of the permission data that is in my customer card update. And I'm going to click OK. So you probably have guessed in that one quick button click why I actually say, yep, make backups. Because as part of that exclude, it excluded every single permission data item that was part of that customer card role or permission set. So not only did it take out just the information dealing with adding a customer card, you're going to notice it took out my zip code. It took out my contact information. It took out my CRM information. So in that one step, I took out not only the customer information, but I took out all those related tables that actually were associated with both of the permissions. So on the opposite, if you decide, you know what, I've created this vendor card and I don't want to have two permission sets. I don't want to have a vendor card update permission set and a customer card update permission set. I want to combine them into one permission because I'm only ever going to have one user do this. You can do the exact opposite and do your include, select the permission set that you want to include into this one, click OK, and it's going to add everything under that permission set into the permission that you just created or wanted to update. But once again, make a backup before you do this. That way you can test it, and after you've tested, if you determine maybe there's too many permissions there or not enough, you can always go back to your original permission set and then move forward from there. So as you can see, what we went over today, really exciting for me. I see so many uses that you, as either someone just maintaining security, as a security manager, for security auditing, that just these two new tools in 2016 have for you as a user. So as I stated before, these are just two of the new features in 2016 security. There are several more that are out there, but due to time constraints, we don't have time to go over all of them. 2016 added a lot of features, and several of them are going to help you maintain more robust, easier to maintain and modify security systems. But I found that these are two that I personally like and have heard people ask for in the past, because the user groups allow you to do a one-stop security. You can put your user groups, memberships, permissions, and everything in one location versus having to transfer back and forth between Active Directory and your NAV database. And the recording permissions also allows you as a security manager to create those more customized user groups or permission sets that you might need for your internal business processes. So at this point in time, I would actually like to go ahead and open this up to any questions that we might have.
All right, thank you so much, Crystal. So I've got a quick follow-on question. Is there any downside to clicking the Add Read Permission to Related Tables checkbox when you are recording roles? Any downside to that?
I don't see one. Me personally, I click it every time just because it's going to add those underlying tables. If for some reason you have a security management need where you don't want to see those underlying tables as part of your audit, would be the only reason I would see of not clicking that button.
All right, great, thank you. And a question from our audience, can you also do field level or field security inside of NAV?
Field security, you know, let me research that a little bit. I want to say you can, but there are some extra steps that you would have to do outside of what was shown in this particular webinar.
All right, great. We'll get an email off to you, Troy, on that final answer. Next question is, where can I find a list of all the added security features in 2016? Do you have a list that we can send out as a follow-up to this webinar, Crystal?
Yeah, I'll get that.
Okay, great.
I will get a list.
Make sure everybody that has registered will get a list of all of the security features in our follow-up email. So thanks for asking, Kelly. Next, can you still have Active Directory groups for security in addition to?
Yes. Yes. This does not take the place of this will not force you to use user groups. You can still use Active Directory if you want to go that route. This is just allowing you to put the Active Directory groupings in Navision if that is something that you desire to do.
All right, and then our next question is, how can you hide banking details of vendors?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, how can you hide the banking details of vendors? So if you're setting permissions and hiding, can you hide certain field or information in certain fields?
So as far as hiding banking detail for specific vendors and stuff like that, that's not something that you could handle through security. That would have to be done through code or certain fields on the cards or forms or reports themselves.
Okay, great. Good question, Tim. And then another question, are permissions still top-down security?
Yes, permissions are still top-down security. Your highest level of security will overwrite all of your lower levels of security.
Great. Let me just check for any other questions or hands being raised. I have those. Great, so we've got some information to pull together. Again, we're going to follow up everyone with a link to the recording as well as a list of all security features in 2016. If you think of any other questions, please feel free to send us an email as well as feedback on this presentation or suggestions for future topics on Lunch and Learn or Lunch and Learn webinar series. You can send those comments to info@archerpoint.com. That's info@archerpoint.com. We definitely appreciate you spending some time with us today. We hope you consider it time well spent, and we look forward to seeing you on our next Lunch and Learn webinar. Again, thanks for your time, and this concludes today's session. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.